Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to the Drum Shuffle. This is episode number 15. Jamie Eads joining you as always. I want to thank you again for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. We have a great show today. I grew up with my older brother, Doug, who is 13 years older than me, and his all-time favorite band is REO Speedwagon. So I grew up hearing REO Speedwagon music quite a bit in my formative years. So to say that I was excited to be able to have Bryan Hitt from REO Speedwagon would be an understatement. So we're going to be joined by Bryan here in just a second. So everybody, please stay tuned. Los Cabos drumsticks may be the best kept secret from drummers today. Los Cabos Drumsticks makes the finest tools to touch a drummer's hands in the business. The best news, almost every popular stick size is available in both white hickory and red hickory. If you don't know what red hickory is, it's made from the heartwood of the hickory tree, unlike regular white hickory, which is made from sapwood. Red hickory drumsticks will hold up to even the hardest hitting drummers. Their durability comes from the density of the wood, but they do not sacrifice the feel. Please visit LosCabosDrumsticks.com to learn more about their products. And don't forget to ask at your favorite retailer for Los Cabos drumsticks. All right, guys, we've got a great conversation for you today with Bryan Hitt. Of course, Bryan has spent the last 28 years in REO Speedwagon. Bryan worked also with the Spencer Davis Group. He also spent some time in Wang Chung, which was just a huge band in the mid 80s. But Bryan has been out on the road every year for the last 28 years with REO Speedwagon, which is just one of the great rock and roll stories. And Bryan was very generous with his time, and we were able to catch him in his hotel as he had just flown in to a show site and was getting ready for the next day's activities. They are out on the road, so please pick up a ticket, go out and see REO Speedwagon. So without further ado, here's Bryan Hitt from REO Speedwagon. Good evening, Bryan. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Well, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on the Drum Shuffle. We really do appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I know that the Speedwagon is out on the road. You guys are doing dates with Styx, and I know that you literally just flew out to a show site. So again, we do appreciate it. Bryan, what we typically like to do, tell our listeners, where you grew up and how you got into music.
Well, I grew up in a town of about 900 people in deep East Texas. It's called the Piney Woods region. And there wasn't much around there but pine trees and chickens and more pine trees.
Well, it sounds like, I grew up in southern Kentucky on a dairy farm of all things, so it sounds like we have similar backgrounds.
Yeah, possibly.
So
it was very rural where I grew up.
Yeah, so a town of 900, what was your first exposure to rock and roll?
My family was pretty musical. Everyone played instruments. My mom played piano by ear. Her father, my grandfather, played piano. I don't ever recall hearing him play. He died fairly young at about 62 years old when I was about 6 or 7, I guess. So, and he'd been sick for a few years. I don't remember him ever sitting down at the piano and playing, but from what I understand, he was pretty good. And then, my mom, I was one of 7 kids. I was towards the end. I was number 5 of 7. and all the kids played instruments. My oldest brother played trumpet. My oldest sister played clarinet. My next two brothers played trumpet, and then came me, the black sheep. It's like, I'm not playing no stupid trumpet. So, I just, I think I came out of the womb banging on stuff. I just always loved drums. I remember having a little tin drum really early as a kid. And I'm not sure what happened, but one of the siblings got sick and threw up on my drum.
Oh,
and
man.
I remember my mom, instead of just cleaning it, she threw it away. I mean, it was like, what?
Oh,
That's
no.
my drum. It was traumatic. I swear, it scarred me for life.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, luckily you chased it and found another kit somewhere along the way.
Well, yeah. This is, I was probably 3 years old. I mean, this is one of my earliest memories. So, and then so we all started band, in the fifth grade in school, and it had a decent band program. There every year or so we'd have a different band director for a while, and then when I came up, I remember playing on a board. The band director wouldn't even let us play on a drum. Of course, when they announce that or suggest people going out for band, and then of course drums are real appealing for most kids. There were more kids wanting to play drums than any other instrument, and so I think it was one way of weeding out the people who were kind of serious about it right off the bat, because we played literally on a 2x4 stretched across the backs of two folding metal chairs for like, I don't know, probably half the year.
Oh, wow.
Until we got some dexterity and stuff. So it would kind of, so by the end of that, there was only one left. I was the only drummer. And being such a small school, by the sixth grade, you were in the high school band, not in the beginner band anymore. So in the sixth grade, in junior high, I was the one and only snare drummer in the high school band. So it was sink or swim pretty quick,
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, if you're first chair right off the bat, I mean, it's...
it was the only chair. That was the thing. So, it was nowhere to go but up from there, So, and I was really small, too. I was tiny. And I was, I remember my mom taking me to back to the band director after the first year because, we were going to start marching band in the sixth grade. So, that snare drum those marching drums are pretty big. And I really was a tiny kid. And so my mom talked to the band director and was trying to get, me and him to agree to change instruments. I think she wanted me to play saxophone or something. I just put my foot down and said, no, if I can't play drums, I'm not playing anything. So,
sure.
My mom was not real supportive of drums. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Well, most moms aren't, right? I mean,
yeah, probably not. So, but anyway, I managed to grow a little bit. I learned how to march with that drum and play it, and never looked back.
So, being from, a small town doing the kind of the marching band thing, at some point, I don't know this, but did, marching band, did that lead you to college? Did you study music in college, or did you kind of leave small town Texas for the big city to chase the rock and roll dream like so many of us do?
Well, I was fortunate enough. I think it was probably my 8th grade year, and we got a new band director, and he was kind of a long-haired hippie type guy. And in a small town in northeast Texas, that was like, oh my God, people were freaking out. This is like 1967. 68. So it was a very conservative area, and this guy came in, and he was just great. He was great. I pretty much owe my career to him. He wasn't a drummer, but he just turned our music program around at the school. And we went from being a real mediocre band to my sophomore year, we were second in the state of Texas in Class A schools for contests. You did marching contests, you did concert contests, and then you did sight reading contests. So if you aced all of those, then you got thrown, it was called sweepstakes. You won sweepstakes. And so we did, and then they submitted the tapes to the state finals, and it was really a big deal. We I think the band that won first, because we got second, they had 105 members. I think we had 42.
Oh wow!
So, but it was great, and I remember him, taking me under his wings and, showing me a lot of stuff. I played in the jazz band in school, and you did the marching band, you did concert band, you did everything, the pep rallies. I remember playing on, boats going down the river, playing Dixieland music, with a small combo from that band. And then what happened with me is about when I was about 15, I guess, my 2 older brothers were trumpet players, and they had joined a band, a soul band. It was called the Solid Souls, and they were playing, every weekend pretty much, playing gigs. CFW halls and, veterans things and, dances here and there, small time stuff. And it was really a pretty good band. They played all, soul music, James Brown, Sam and Dave, Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, that kind of stuff. I got better than their drummer, and I think he was starting to give them a little bit of trouble. And so they fired him and hired me. So at 15, I was in a band with guys, all older than me, and we were, working, making money and stuff. And I bought a motorcycle, and
Well, yeah, because what else does a drummer do with his money besides buy a motorcycle, right?
Of course.
A life of great decisions. The first being, I'll be a drummer, right?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Well, of course.
So, it had to be cool then, I guess, playing with your brothers as a young guy. I mean, and kind of cutting your teeth that way. Because, we're all in, garage bands or whatever as young guys. But your older brothers will really beat up on you a little bit, if you're not, if you're not playing the groove exactly the way they want it. So I'm sure that was super formative for you.
Yeah, it really was. Was I towing the line? Probably not. But, we were high school kids, and younger. I think I just started high school when I joined that band. So, so I was, we did it for like 2 years before. And then my mom remarried and moved to Alaska, and I stayed living with my grandmother with my 2 older brothers in Texas for a year. And, because I had, I loved the school band, and I was very involved in that. And then we had the Solid Souls. I was working and making my own money, and I didn't want to move to Alaska. So I stayed, in Texas, and, not much supervision and kind of running wild and, just doing things that kids do. And after about a year of that, the law came down that you are going to Alaska. And as it turns out, it wasn't a bad deal for me. The Solid Souls broke up. My band director left, that school, and it wasn't much around there for me anymore. So, yeah, I made the big move to Alaska, which for me was, I moved to Anchorage, which is about 250,000 people at that point. So that to me was a big city, cosmopolitan. I mean, it was like happening, So, yeah, I moved up there, went to, finished high school up there my last 2 years. Got in the band program at school. I hated it. Just wasn't the same. Wasn't the same. So I think I didn't even play in the band my senior year, and I was only in school for half a year anyway. I graduated early. I had enough credits, and it was like, I'm done. So, but then as far as college, I didn't do any college. I went, for me, pretty much right out of high school, I did some odd jobs around, and then started getting, I had kind of quit playing for about a year, really, because I just didn't like the program in school there at all, and just busy, with a girlfriend and this and that, and working a job after school. So I just I quit for a long time, and then I'm not sure why or when I got back into it, but shortly thereafter, and started playing around with friends more. And it was kind of a drag for me because I'd been in a real professional outfit with we had a PA system and, Fender Bandmaster amps and Farfisa organs and, cool gear, and we're working and making money. And then to go from that to, jamming with, a guitar player in his living room, at his parents' house was not quite the same. So it took me a while to kind of, get back into the music thing there, but I did, and there were a lot of opportunities to play, and I got a pretty good band together, and we started working. And about that same time, I was a mailman right out of high school up there in Anchorage, and getting up early. I mean, you'd clock in at 6 a.m. and once we started playing bars with the band, the bars in Alaska stayed open till 5 a.m., especially on the weekends. So you would be playing from 9 to 4:30 on the Friday and Saturday nights, and getting up to go to the post office was not a priority anymore for me.
I'd imagine not.
Getting home at 5. So, so I quit the post office and went to, just thought, I got to give this a shot. So we did. And, I starved for a while, but things worked out, and, bands got better and started making more money and better gigs. And, I stayed up there for 10 years and, played all kinds. I got to, one thing that was great about being a kind of a big fish in a small pond was getting to play a lot of different types of music, from like piano, jazz trios to, you name it, funk bands, rock bands, I got to do a little bit of all of it. So it was kind of really good for me.
Sure. Well, I mean, it just makes you a really well-rounded player when you get to play in so many different, situations and groups. You can speak to it, far better than I can, but when you can cover all those styles, the gigs come so much easier. If you can step into any gig and play comfortably, you're going to get a whole lot more phone calls, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And there wasn't a whole lot of competition. It wasn't that I was that good. It was just there wasn't anybody else that was much better either. So it was kind of, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time a lot of times.
Sure.
But, I took it seriously, and I learned a lot from all of those gigs. And, finally, so I moved to Alaska in 1970, and then I made the big move from there in 1980 to LA.
And obviously you've played with a lot of different folks. I mean, I think you're probably most well known for the years that you've spent now in REO Speedwagon. But what were some of the gigs that you landed when you were in LA? I understand that at one point you were actually playing with Cher. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So was that kind of right out of the gate when you got to LA? I'm sure there were some struggles that led up to that, right?
Oh no. Yeah, I was, I pretty much starved for a while in LA. It was, I knew one person there, my ex-girlfriend, who we got back together when I moved to LA. And we started a band, just a, cover top 40 band, and started playing little gigs and and then that got better and better. And so, but I remember a few times in a few clubs that I just wouldn't be caught dead in now, playing, for like people and making and thinking, man, how much longer can I do this?
Yeah.
Like I was ready. I remember one night in particular, I was ready to throw in the towel, and luckily I didn't. I kept working at it. And in LA, while I was here early on, I started going to LA City College and playing in the big band there. So I did that for a couple of years, and I looked up some good teachers after a few years, and I studied. I had one lesson with Joe Porcaro, and then at that time I was playing a traditional grip, and he said, "Man, you should just switch to match grip." And I was, why? I didn't get it. It took me a couple of years to get it, and then Joe, right? Because later on that's the route I went, and I'm glad I did switch over. And then I was on a waiting list to study with Terry Bozzio, and also with Ralph Humphrey.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And I'd been waiting for Ralph for a long time, and then I called, then I got tired of waiting, and then I called Terry, and Terry said he could take me, and I swear to God, that same day Ralph called me and said, "Well, okay, I can take you now." So
that's the way that always works.
Yeah, so I called Terry up and told him, "Hey, man, I told him the story. I've been waiting to study with Ralph for a long time." So that was great for me. I'll tell you what, just studying with somebody like that, he really, I don't think I would have made it in L.A. without that foundation that I got from Ralph. It just started from sitting right and positioning the pedals and stuff and the snare drum in the right place, and we built it from there. And I remember I had a little kind of a jazz fusion thing I was doing at the time, and we did a pretty sophisticated recording, and I thought it was pretty cool. And I brought it in and played a song for Ralph, and Ralph said, "Bryan, you got some great ideas here, man, but the time is not happening. It's not happening." And you know what? He was right on. It wasn't happening. So, man, I tell you what, I bought me 3 or 4 metronomes, and I got to work and started, working on the time thing. So, which was a godsend for me because, that was right about that time was the advent of drum machines, and everybody got real time conscious. And, if you couldn't play in time, then you just had no business being there. So that was great. So, yeah, I got a lot from Ralph for sure. I studied from him for about a year, and then things started popping for me in L.A., I worked through a bunch of top 40 bands. We were on like the main circuit in LA, in town playing clubs, making good money. I mean, it was the top of the heap as far as that went, but it was all playing cover tunes. So we got a band together with some really good players, and started working on original stuff, but also playing clubs. And then we got, because there was no way to keep that caliber of players together for that long and not make any money. So we played clubs at night, and we got on the really good circuit again. So we were making some change, and and we got a record deal, in about a year's time, and the band went on, and we made a record, and it went plywood, and our singer got too big of a head. He thought, well, since we're signed to a record deal and stuff, we can't play top 40 clubs anymore. So then we proceeded to starve for a while. And then after about a year of that, it was like, man, I got to do something. This isn't happening for me. So I quit the band, and I started working for the drum doctor in LA, doing cartage and setups for guys. And one of my guys was Jeff Porcaro, and I used to set up Jeff, and sometimes Jim Keltner, I'd set up him. Wow. Sometimes Vinny Colaiuta. So I was, even though I wasn't playing, I was still surrounded by the music thing and the drum thing, and I learned a lot about drums, sound-wise, and especially vintage drums, because a lot of the stuff that Ross at Drum Doctor would rent out were vintage drums that just sounded great. Everybody wanted to use them. So,
well, I mean, Ross Garfield was just, royalty in terms of, studio rentals out there. I mean, anytime a band was in one of the studios and needed a certain sound, Ross was the A call, right? I mean, and so I'm sure you learned at the hand of the master, so to speak.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't there for very long, thank goodness. About that time, I as a matter of fact, I was setting up Jeff Porcaro one day in the studio, and Peter Wolf, not the singer from Jay Giles, but Peter Wolf, the keyboard player from Zappa, and he produced. He played with everybody and produced, Lionel Richie. He had just done the Wang Chung, the new album for them, and. For some reason, Jeff probably just assumed I was a drummer, but I had really cool hair, and Peter Wolf didn't care if I could play or not, because we were just gonna go on and do some TV shows. We did Solid Gold and American Bandstand and stuff, and I'll never forget. So I just got a call from Peter out of the blue. Jeff had given him my number, and he asked, they asked me if I wanted to do some TV shows with Wang Chung, and I said, yeah, and so I went in. I learned the parts really well, and you're playing on dead drums and doubled up cymbals. They were special studio, quiet stuff.
Sure.
So you could go ahead and thump, and not make too much racket. So I learned all the parts, and, it was grooving and stuff. And even though we're just, lip syncing, we started the tune on, I think it was, Everybody Have Fun Tonight, and I'm nailing the parts, and you can hear it clicking back there. And all, the three main guys in Wang Chung look back. It's like, holy this guy's got cool hair, but he can actually play.
He's actually a drummer.
So I got the gig, and I toured with him for the next year and a half or so. It was great. That was my first big break. So
sure. Well, and so you and I talked the other day when we were, trying to get this set up, and not to jump too far ahead, but in the legendary career that REO Speedwagon has had, we talked about this the other day. You're the longest serving drummer by a long shot in REO Speedwagon. You've been with REO since what, 89, 88?
Yep. 89.
89. Okay.
Yeah. So in August, it'll be 28 years.
Wow. Now, of course, everybody knows REO Speedwagon from, just those big, high infidelity, the monster records of the 80s. That's what they remember. But REO Speedwagon's been around for a really, really long time. Now I'm not trying I'm not trying to age you, Bryan. But
I'm the youngest in the band.
Of course, right? But prior,
but not by much.
Yeah, but prior to Kevin Cronin, the lead vocalist, prior to him joining the band, there were several records that were out. But tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the REO Speedwagon gig.
Well, the Wang Chung thing kind of fizzled out. They weren't touring, they weren't making a record. I did get to play on a few songs on their very last record they did. And then they got Vinny Colaiuta to play the rest, which I understand that.
Well, sure.
I get it. But anyways, I was gigging around town playing a lot of gigs, man. I had a lot of irons and a lot of fires, and things were happening for me. I was doing a good bit of studio work, both programming and playing. And I was playing a lot with Spencer Davis group, and we were doing weekend flyouts, and it was a good band, and just make some cash and play some cool songs. But I had 3 or 4 other things, bands not of that caliber in town, and I remember going to a Cher audition, and I met a guitar player who was auditioning, and he got the gig. The first time I played with Cher, I didn't get the gig, which was no big deal for me. So I was doing the Spencer thing and a lot of other things, and Dave, the guitar player who's got the Cher gig and who has been in REO now for 28 years with me, he's about 3 months my senior in the band. So I'm the new guy. We're both new guys, but I'm the newest new guy.
You're the real new guy, right? The really, really new guy.
So anyway, I was recommended. I was recommended by Dave, and I was also recommended by Kevin's girlfriend at the time, who was working for Geffen Records, and I was playing with this really whacked out band. And we were showcasing for Geffen, and Lisa saw me playing Kevin's girlfriend, and I don't know where she put together that I might fit with REO Speedwagon from the type of music that this particular band was playing, because it was really weird. It was weird. I had a kind of a bastard drum set, some electronic pads, a couple of real drums, some pots and pans and doodads, and it was really, really one of the most different things I've ever done. But she just kind of, nothing happened with that band, but she, talked to me afterwards, said, my boyfriend's band's I think they're going to need a new drummer. So I said, yeah, well, I'll check it out. And she told me who it was, and I wasn't that excited. I really wasn't a fan of REO Speedwagon at first. I didn't know the history. For some reason, in Alaska, they didn't get much airplay, and the first time I heard of them was when I moved to LA in 1980. And of course, 81, High Fidelity came out.
Sure.
But still, I didn't know about the rock songs. All I knew was the radio songs, the hit ballads. And I thought they were kind of, maybe like an Air Supply kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
I didn't know it was, I just didn't, I didn't know what the live shows were like. So I wasn't that excited, but it was like, okay, it sounds like a good gig. So I went down, I played. I got the gig. I guess, as I've been told since, I was the first guy to play, and Kevin, I guess, knew right away that I was the one, even before anybody else played. They tried to, they talked about, well, why should we even bother hearing these other guys? I know this is, and so anyway, one of the things that helped me on that gig was some vintage drums that I had bought when I was down in Florida with Spencer Davis at a place, and I had this 1923 to 25-ish Ludwig Stippelgold snare, which is basically a black beauty with the sprayed-on finish that looks like gold nuggets. Although this drum, as old as it was, didn't look like gold nuggets anymore, but it sounded like one. So I brought that in, and that was the drum I auditioned with, and Kevin just fell in love with that drum right away, which was cool, because he plays up, I don't know, 1954 Nocaster, it's before they named it Telecaster. Right. So he was into the vintage stuff, and so he loved that, and he loved the drum, and I got the gig, and I remember I had a deal with Tama at the time. I was an endorsee for Tama, and I didn't want to really bring that, Ludwig snare out on the road, and so I bring all my new Tama drums in to start rehearsal with the band, and Kevin looks around almost immediately, says, "Where's that drum?" What do you mean? It's old. I can't take it on the road. I'll kill it. And he said, "No. We hired you and that drum."
Oh, okay.
So I just changed the hoops out a little bit on that drum, so I would kill it and beat the hell out of it for a couple of years on the road, which it was fine. I buy drums, and I have a pretty good collection nowadays of vintage stuff. I probably have 15, 20s, 30s Black Beauties, and all kinds of, 30s, 40s Radio Kings, and just Leadies, and you name it. I got way too many drums. But
don't we all?
It was cool that I that had some knowledge of that and started collecting and had some cool drums.
Sure. Well, and, even nowadays, and we kind of talked about this on the phone the other day, your drum tech that you have out with you on the tour is John Aldridge, and anybody that knows anything about, Ludwig metal snare drums will know John's name because he is the master engraver for Ludwig. So
oh yeah,
how cool is it to have John out there on the road with you every day? Do you guys just geek out on drums every single day?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, my snare drums now are just incredible. I mean, and John, if he gets bored, he starts engraving other things. He's engraved all, my rims mounts on the toms, and he'll
so cool.
Engrave the cowbells, and it's like nobody ever sees it but me and him, and maybe a few other geeks that, it's just way cool stuff.
Yeah, it's just
and
so cool.
John's a great tech. He's a great tuner, and he's a good drummer, actually. He just doesn't have the stamina that I have. Thank God.
Well,
or the hair.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've mentioned the hair 3 or 4 times now, I mean, there's got to be something to it.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this, for our listeners who, I think a lot of people, again, going back to kind of the big monster record from 1981, High Infidelity, everybody knows REO Speedwagon from that era for sure, because you couldn't escape those songs. And, my connection with REO Speedwagon, I've got a brother that's, 13 years my senior, and REO Speedwagon was his favorite band of all time. So, I mean, I grew up with that music playing in the house all the time, So it was kind of undeniable to me for sure. But, I've seen you guys live, and, obviously you have to play the hits. I mean, everybody knows that when you're out on the road, you got to play the hits. But man, you guys are a rockin' band. You're not going to a top 40 show where all you're going to hear is, Keep on Loving You and Can't Fight This Feeling. I saw Bruce, your bass player, singing, Back on the Road Again. And that's undeniable. That is a hard rock song, and it's,
oh yeah,
and it's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, how you guys go about constructing your set lists and some of the stuff that maybe our listeners don't know about REO Speedwagon.
Interesting. Well, I finished, when I was talking about REO before, I wasn't that into it, but it didn't take me long to get it, playing gigs. And I remember a gig early on, of course we started slow, played a few clubs and stuff like that, but, things, there was a lot of transition in the band with Gary Richrath leaving and then also Alan leaving. So this was kind of a new band. But anyway, we're playing gigs and, I remember, I'm enjoying it. One great thing, they made me a member of the band immediately, never a sideman. So from day one, I was a fifth member of REO Speedwagon.
That's awesome.
Quite cool.
That doesn't happen anymore usually.
Nope, it doesn't. Yeah, that's very, very rare these days, and I sure appreciate the guys for doing that. But it's worked, well for them too. They've gotten my loyalty for 28 years, and I was still getting calls. I mean, when I got the REO gig, I had just gotten the Belinda Carlisle gig, and I had just gotten the Richard Marx gig also.
Oh wow! Okay, well, I mean that was the biggest of the big at that time. I mean, it really was.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like things were popping. It was like kind of a little bit in demand there, and I thought I could do REO Speedwagon because we were going in the studio to do a record, and they unfortunately they'd already spent a lot of time and effort in the studio and didn't have any tracks. This was after Alan left, and they had Graham Lear from Santana and Gino Vanelli was playing drums. He originally took Alan's place for a minute, and they just weren't getting what they wanted in the studio. So then they got Russ Kunkel to come in and play a little bit, and that didn't work out for what they wanted. And then Jeff Porcaro went in and played a couple of songs, which they did keep. But I think at that point, Kevin especially just said, this doesn't feel right. We've always been a band. We want it to be a band. We want the guy who plays on the records to be in the band and tour. So anyway, I got it. I got the gig, and then we're in the studio recording, and I got this Belinda gig on the side. And the thing with Richard didn't work out. We couldn't agree on money, so I just told him thanks, but no thanks. But REO, I went to REO and I said, well, okay, I can do this gig for like 6 weeks with Belinda. I'll spend 2 or 3 weeks in the studio with you guys. And they said, oh, that'll be fine. Yeah, you can do that. So I committed to the Belinda thing. And then when we went in the studio, they decided that maybe that wasn't a good idea. Yeah. So anyway, then I finished my tracks in less than 2 weeks. They'd already been in the studio for over a month that didn't have a track. So I finished the record, and then it was time to go out with Belinda, and they said, we were still in the studio recording. I hadn't finished yet, but they put the nicks on the Belinda Carlisle thing. So anyway, so I didn't get to do that, even though I got the gig. But anyway, with REO also, once we started playing some good gigs and I saw what it was and how the audience reacted to the songs and how, the band was more than just a couple of big ballads. I remember playing a gig in Phoenix at the Veterans Arena, where the Phoenix Suns at that time played, and I think it was 4th of July or something, and it was a packed stadium or an arena, and we had one of the big lights, and all the lighters come out, and 14,000 people in there or something, and it was like, holy this is pretty cool. I think I can hang with this,
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, it was great. So.
Well, I mean, I think what's, obviously you guys have been doing, and I don't know if it's an every year or every other year kind of thing, but you guys have been going out quite a bit with Styx, and doing, kind of long runs where, you guys will headline one night, Styx headlines the next night, that kind of thing. It's a great package that's out there, quite honestly. I think the two bands complement each other really, really well. And you mentioned Dave Amato earlier, who is, you said you're senior in the band by 3 months, just to show what a big rock and roll geek I am. But, he's a bona fide rock guitarist. That guy sang backup on Motley Crue records.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
sure.
he was kind of
all
the
that on girls.
Yeah.
That's Dave.
Yeah. I mean, he was kind of the secret weapon for a lot of those bands in that era. He would go in the studio and do those super high harmonies. I mean, how cool is it hitting the stage every night? You're on the road with Styx, and I mean, that's just a huge rock show, but you've got a bona fide, guitar god there, and you've got Kevin Cronin and Bruce Hall, fantastic bass player. How cool is that gig every night, man? I mean, really.
You know what? It's great. It really is great. At this point in time, we're all tired of traveling.
Well, yeah.
But that hour and a half, 2 hours on stage is just it's the gravy, man. It's like it's the our motto is we get paid for traveling. We play for free.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think all of us say that, my joke is, I play for free. You're paying me to set up and tear down at the end of the night,
right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I hear you.
So what does the future hold for REO Speedwagon? I mean, obviously, you guys have been around for a long time. You've been in the band 28 years, as we discussed, but, any new music on the horizon, or are you guys, happy to do your runs every year, every other year? I mean, what does the future hold?
Well, we have toured every year for 28 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And we don't plan to stop that anytime soon. I think the only thing that will curtail that is if someone's health gets bad. There are no plans at this point to not tour. The last few years have been as good as any years that we've had since I've been in the band. Since the heyday of the early '80s. We're playing better gigs, good audiences, more money, all the good stuff. We can't sell arenas by ourselves, or sheds, as we call them, the outdoor amphitheaters, but we can usually find someone to team up with, like a Styx, or, we just finished that tour with Styx we did last year, and then we did about 5 weeks early this year with that, and we just finished last week, and then we're just playing a bunch of shows by ourselves for a couple of months, and then we go out with Chicago for the remainder of the summer.
Oh, and wow, okay.
We'll be in the middle slot with Chicago, whereas with Styx, it's a co-headlining thing. It's total, there's no upper billing, and we just book the shows and then decide who's going to close what and divvy them up. There's no, obviously they have some markets where they might be stronger than us, and vice versa.
Sure.
And we try to honor that. But otherwise, it's just like, okay, you take this gig, we'll take that one. You take that one, we'll take this one. And it's been a great working situation. We love all those guys. Our crews get along together. I mean, it's just a fabulous thing. And, even though it seems like we do it about every other year with them, last year was the first time in 6 years that we had toured with them. So, we were ready.
Has it really been
that
long?
The audiences were ready.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't believe it's been that long. I mean, the years start running together.
Don't they?
After a while. Well, here's the drum geek in me coming out. What a monster Styx has behind the drums in Todd Sucherman, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
How cool is it to be out on the road with that cat?
Oh, it's great. You know what? I admire Todd's playing. His technique, and it's just he's a monster.
Yeah,
it's great. He's taught me a lot of stuff. And I steal a lot of stuff from Todd. And it's great. I try not to do too much because I don't want to play that much. And I don't think REO Speedwagon songs would allow me to play that much. But I love Todd. We're buds, man. And even on this last Styx tour, we had Don Felder from the Eagles opening all the shows with Steve Stanislaw playing drums, who's no slouch either. He's a really great grooving drummer. So the three of us together, it was a force to be reckoned with, every night.
A real hoot, I'm sure.
It was great. And yeah, it was so much fun.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Bryan, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you took a flight today to get to where you were going so that you guys can do some shows, and you're out on a run right now. But I do want to ask just, a couple of final questions. Who were your biggest influences coming up? I mean, who are the guys that get your juices going in terms of drummers?
Well, I think early on, I didn't even know who the guys were. Well, my first inspiration was Cubby from the Mouseketeers, for sure. Seeing him on TV, and Little Ricky on Lucy show.
Yeah.
Little Ricky was badass.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I think those were early in. Really, it's like, wow, they can do that. That might be fun. And then, of course, growing up, I was into the soul music, and so I loved all those drummers, and I didn't know who they were. They were pretty much anonymous, but something about those grooves, man, it was just like the right thing at the right time. So all the James Brown drummers and all those, the guys that played on those Stax records and stuff. And
Al Jackson Jr., yeah.
All the Motown, it was great. Even Stevie Wonder, geez, what a drummer. What great feel and ideas. And then later on, I remember like Cream and Chicago, of course, were big influences. And there's so many great drummers. I hate them all.
Me too, and I jokingly say to a lot of my guests on the show, I have to hate you because you're so much better than me. It's kind of my little joke, but, what's cool about us drummers, that I think is different from, guitarists, and I'm not trying to put guitarists down or anything like that, but, us drummers, we give credit when we steal things. It's like at least me, I'm always taking something from somebody else's playing and adapting it to my playing, but I'll give credit, and it's like, no, this lick, I picked up from watching Bryan Hitt in REO Speedwagon. Guitarists are just like, no, I invented that.
All right. Yeah, I know. You know what? I think drummers have a better camaraderie in general, than a lot of other players and musicians, singers,
Without a doubt.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a fraternity of drummers, that we're all cheering for each other, and
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I think it's
and
just
we hang.
Yeah, it's a cool brotherhood. And, that was, certainly my hopes for this show when I started it up, a couple of months back was, just two guys talking about drums and music. I mean, that's really what I wanted this show to be. And that's what it's turned into. And I'm very blessed. Bryan, one final thing that I want to touch on before we let you go. I'm going to let you get a good night's sleep so you can play a slamming show tomorrow night. One thing that we do with all of our guests is we ask for, a piece of advice for other drummers or other musicians, and it can really touch on anything you want it to, but share a good piece of advice that you think might help our listeners.
Man, there's so many different avenues nowadays to get heard, and to get seen and stuff. I mean, it's a different world than, when I was, in the early 80s trying to make it in LA. One suggestion, though, I think it really helps to be in an area. I mean, if you want to play drums in a famous rock or whatever kind of band, you need to be somewhere where those bands are. If you're living in Podunk, Kentucky, and you're thinking you're going to be a rock star, that might be a little tough.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's Nashville, there's New York, there's L.A. I'm sure there was Seattle at one time, although I don't think it would be the place you'd want to move right now, being a drummer. But you kind of got to go where the sun shines, where the stuff's happening, unless you just get lucky and you grow up and your high school buddies get really good and you've got a different, unique sound and you're making noise and you get signed and everything's rosy. So, there's no, one size fits all for anyone. But my advice would just, and practice when you're young. I mean, practice when you're old too, but you'll have a lot more time to practice when you're young than when you get older, when you're working all the time, when you have a family, when you have commitments, you have, stress, things, just life happening. And it happens so much quicker now than it used to. So I would say definitely, don't put yourself out there too early, because you might only get one or two shots, and if you blow those first two shots, it may be over. So.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it's so many young folks today. Ask, what is the shortcut? How do I get there? And we jokingly say a lot of times, I can get online and find an 8-year-old that can outplay me. I mean, it's not hard to search it out and find it now. Everybody's a good player these days, it seems like.
Right.
And it's not lost on me that, there is a certain amount of luck involved, but there is no magic bullet. There is no shortcut and no amount of, videos or, Facebook likes or whatever is going to give you a living in the music industry. That's for certain.
Right. Yeah. If I could say one other thing, it's not all about playing fast or, you get gigs is, I mean, drummers don't hire drummers, for one thing.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. I've never gotten a job from another drummer. I might get turned on to one, but only because they couldn't do it, but never hired by another drummer to play on anything. But what am I just people want to feel good. That if you can make people feel good when you're playing with them, other musicians, that's what they want to know. That's what they want to feel. They don't want to hear your fastest riff over and over. They want to know that you can groove and feel the beat where they feel it and make the music sing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's all about the groove and making the dudes and ladies in your band know that the foundation is going to be there no matter what. That's the that's the name of the game. Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. Folks, REO Speedwagon is out there this spring and summer. Go see these guys. They will be coming to a city near you. Pick up your tickets. Go check them out. Bryan, you're welcome on this program anytime, sir. Whenever your schedule will allow, we'd love to have you back.
Well, thanks. I'd like to give a few props here if I could.
Sure.
Real quick, I'd like to thank my wonderful drum tech, John Aldridge. It is a blessing to have a guy like that working for me, setting up, tuning, making my drums look pretty every night. Also, Ludwig, Zildjian, Vic Firth, Evans Heads, Axis Pedals, Gibraltar Hardware. I'm sure I'm going to probably leave some out. LP Percussion. Pentec Percussion, and I hope that covers it. Probably not. It's great to be famous.
For sure, and a lot of folks ask me, they'll say, these gear companies and things, and what you just did right there is exactly what our gear companies want us to do, and that's spread the word. And you and I have both been very blessed to have really good relationships with these great gear companies that keep us going out there. So we appreciate you taking care of your companies that take care of you. And if you haven't seen Bryan's beautiful Ludwig kit that he's touring with, do a couple of real quick internet searches, because that is one fancy outfit you've got out there on the road, Bryan.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It really is. Bryan,
Jamie, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, buddy.
All right. See ya. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for episode number 15 of the Drum Shuffle. As always, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're using to listen in today. You are not going to want to miss some of the guests that we have scheduled for upcoming episodes of this show. I never in my wildest imagination could have dreamed of some of the emails that I get, and from some of the guys I get them from, and phone calls. It's just amazing. And as our show continues to grow, we are going to continue bringing you interviews with some of the greatest drummers to have ever played any type of music. So we want you to keep tuning in. So hit the subscribe button. Make sure you don't miss a single episode. As always, keep your emails coming to us. We love hearing from you throughout the week. That email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com, and my website is jamieeads.com. So until next time, may your heads stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.